excuse me. So last week's passage ended with Joseph having his dreams and the father wondering. And so this week's passage starts with Jacob sending Joseph out to find his brothers who were tending the sheep and the goats. So there Joseph is. He walks to find his brothers, and the scripture says when Joseph's brothers saw him coming, they recognized him at a distance. And as he approached, they made plans to kill him. Well, when I'm having a bad family time, I just remind myself that this is family dysfunction here. Pick up Genesis. Now, Joseph's 17, and he's walking out, and of course, they can see him from far away because he's got this nice coat of many colors that his father bought him and not them. And in the deserts of Israel, a color stands out drastically. And they see him far away, wearing that fancy coat that they didn't get, and they plan to kill him. Those brothers are jealous. I mean, we can understand in some ways why they're jealous. Joe gets the coat. Joe is only 17 and doesn't have to work as hard as they do. So, of course, they're jealous. But what happens is they allow that jealousy to eat them from the inside out to the point where they are ready to kill their very own brother. If this series is called What Not to Do, we learned this morning not to commit the sin of jealousy. They are jealous, so much so they want to kill him. Now, this is the extreme side of what jealousy can do, that it leads to so much hate and a desire to kill. And yet, it's also a reminder to us of what Paul says in Ephesians when he says, do not allow sin a foothold. It actually says, do not let anger, bitterness, or harboring resentment give the devil a foothold. When we allow resentment and bitterness and envy and jealousy into our lives, it festers. That resentment builds up. When we say, why did they get that promotion and not me? When we say, oh, their yard is so much better, I gotta go out and fix mine just like it. Can you believe that they've got that clothing? It stacks up and it builds and it festers until it comes out in an explosion of bitterness and hate where the devil has taken over. And for those brothers this morning, it's come to the point where they are plotting to kill him. And then there's Reuben. Now, Reuben is the oldest son. And we know if you're a firstborn child that all the responsibility falls to you. Those younger kids, they get away with everything and you have to be the responsible one. Well, in that culture, amplify that for the oldest son. He would have been responsible for the other brothers. Full out responsibility. And there was a little incident with his stepmom in chapter 35. So Jacob is not too pleased with his older son, Reuben. And Reuben now wants to get back in his dad's good graces. So he has this idea, okay, let's not kill Joseph. He says to his brothers, let's just throw him in a cistern and let him die. Like that would somehow be better to let him die of starvation. But see, Reuben is plotting, it says, the scripture says, secretly to go back and get Joseph. Now, remember, he's the oldest son. He held the power over all the other brothers, but somehow he doesn't want to speak up to those 9, so he plots secretly to save Joseph. See, he's committing the sin of cowardice. He doesn't speak up to the brothers when he had the power that his word would have been and had to have been accepted. But no, he doesn't want those 9 to get mad at him. I mean, they're enraged and they want to kill him, so he just plots secretly. Now, the kids of Aldersgate right now are learning this exact same passage. And the words that they're going to be talking about, not cowardice, but the words of peer pressure. You see, we teach it to our kids all the time, especially as they go off to school at this time of year. But it's really important for us as adults as well. Because we get afraid, we get scared. That leads to cowardice. You see, it takes courage to hold a coworker accountable for the way they talk about the female employees. It takes courage to speak up when a friend tells a racial joke or uses the words, "those people." It takes courage to stand for God's convictions when everyone around you is spewing fear and hate. So Reuben convinces them not to kill Joseph. And then there's Judah. If it can't get any worse, then there's Judah, who sees those Ishmaelite traders off in the distance and has the brilliant idea, yes, we don't have to kill Joseph, we can get some cash for it. That's a transactional relationship right there. I'm going to sell my brother because that's better. We won't kill him. We're going to sell him into slavery and get 20 pieces of silver in the process. That silver, that cold hard cash is very enticing, and Judah convinces all the others, so they sell their brother into slavery because they commit the sin of greed. Paul writes in 1 Timothy, "For the love of money is the root of all evil." Now, that's the one that we have memorized a lot. It's often misquoted. Money is the root of all evil. No. Paul writes, "For the love of money is the root of all evil." That's greed. That's wanting more and more. But then as I sat down to write this, I wanted to quote it accurately. So of course I Googled where it was in 1 Timothy. And then I was not stunned, but it struck me. Paul writes, "For the love of money is the root of all evil." And then he says, "And some people craving money have wandered from the true faith and pierced themselves with sorrow." That Paul, he knows how to nail it for us. For some people craving have wandered away from the true faith and pierced themselves with sorrows. It is the craving that leads to the sin. And we see that throughout this chapter. The brothers are craving and wanting what Joseph gets from their father. Reuben craves the acceptance from his brothers, and Judah craves that money. And it leads them to to the tragedy of selling their brother into slavery. See, it's a slippery slope. When we start to sin, when we allow the devil a foothold, we crave and we crave what we don't have, what we haven't been given, and it leads to slavery and death. It's a lesson for us this morning to watch how far these brothers have slid and to catch ourselves before that happens. Now, the one amazing thing about this Joseph story is God is always present in some way, but you have to look and you have to listen and you have to see the glimmers of God in each of these stories. Because last week we learned about all three of the characters and how the Bible people and how they were so deeply flawed, even Joseph. But the scripture ended with Joseph having dreams from the Lord. And so today, it's tough to notice, but we know the end of the story, so we can see where God is. Because verse 36 says, he was sold to Potiphar, captain of the palace guard for Pharaoh in Egypt. You see, God never leaves us in hopelessness. Even as the boy is being sold into slavery, God is present because he's sold to Potiphar, who's a right-hand man of Pharaoh. And we know, and we'll learn and we'll follow through this story, that will lead to the salvation of the Egyptians and the Israelites through Joseph's dreams. We study these scriptures because we learn about normal, flawed human beings just like us. And we learn that when we fall short, God still acts. In the tragedy of sold into slavery, Joseph will go and be placed by the Pharaoh of Egypt. When we go out into the world, we will sin. For us this week, it's to catch those sins and to listen, to stop the craving before it takes over. And then the good news is to know that God is very real, God is very present, and God is acting and wants to use you.